Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Amazon Monthly Briefing for June 2019. For those of you who have attended these in the past, welcome back. For those of you who are new attendees, welcome for the first time. In our Amazon Monthly Briefing, we recap the top developments from Amazon, one of the world's most relevant and powerful e-commerce platforms, with our takes on the key initiatives and what you need to know. Just the three pieces of housekeeping before we start. You are on mute. If you have any questions, we will be leaving time at the end to answer those. Please use the Q&A tool within GoToWebinar to ask those questions. A second piece of housekeeping as well, a recording will be sent out after the webcast for you to share with your teams. The deck as well will be included. And then the final piece of housekeeping, I would ask of you just a favor. We have two survey questions that are going to come up once I close out GoToWebinar. It'd be really helpful and great if you could answer those for us. It helps us inform our content for future webcasts. With that, let's get started. So I'm really excited to announce that for this month's Amazon Monthly Briefing, we have a guest speaker with us today, Chris Perry, Vice President of Global Executive Education at Edge by Ascential. Chris runs all of our really great Edge by Ascential events, our hackathons, and our share groups around the world. So thanks for being with us today, Chris.
Thanks, Jack. I'm really honored to be here and contribute my nerddom to our discussion. So.
Yes, and we've got a lot of great developments for the two of us to kind of bat back and forth here talking about Amazon. For those of you who maybe are on the webcast for the first time, my name is Jack O'Leary. I'm a Senior Analyst of E-commerce Insights here at Edge by Ascential. But since we have Chris here today, and before we get into the content, who better to introduce two of our upcoming events than the man himself, Chris Perry?
And this is a shameless plug, but very highly relevant for this audience, so that's why I felt it important to call out. But we, in addition to all of our virtual engagement and events that we hold, these webcasts each month, focused on driving your Amazon business, we've over the last several years, we've been ramping up our e-hackathon summits, focused on actually actionable takeaways on how you actually drive your Amazon business, both in the US and in Europe. Our upcoming event for Amazon US is in Seattle on September 24th. It's a full-day summit where you and your fellow leaders of change come together with insiders and experts, practitioners as well, to learn and ultimately take away the latest best practices and strategies to drive e-commerce growth on Amazon. I think the key for me, having been a practitioner myself for the last 9 years in CPG, is I've been to a lot of conferences, and these are not typical conferences on purpose. These are very unconference, in fact. They go way beyond just telling you some great ideas that aren't implementable, to actually handing you, the actionable takeaways that you can take back to work the next day. They're designed by practitioners, for you, the practitioners, and for the people, we like to say, the ones who get growth done. There's a double early bird offer for 20% off that ends on 7/11. So you can go to our website and find out there, or you can reach out to your Edge partners. We also have an event in London coming up in October. The 22nd, 23rd, day one is focused on Amazon. Day two on the 23rd is focused on optimizing your digital shelf across Europe. So again, shameless plug, but just very relevant and a great opportunity to get together with about 200 of your fellow leaders of change to hack challenges and opportunities and win in this e-commerce driven world. So thank you very much.
Great, thanks, Chris. And I can say, as having attended a few of these hackathons, they're really great events, and can only reiterate what Chris says, that the hack shops in particular really give you actionable takeaways to bring back to your e-commerce businesses, focused on Amazon and other players as well. But with that, let's get into the content of this month. It has been fairly active since we last spoke in May in terms of headlines and developments with Amazon. So diving right in here, I think the first headline to really look at, Amazon hosted an event where they unveiled a few different new technologies, but perhaps one of the most interesting and exciting in terms of sustainability initiatives, in terms of futuristic technology, is a new Prime Air drone was unveiled. This air drone can take off both vertically and fly horizontally. It's considered way more sustainable than what they previously had, and safer. They're also integrating new AI systems to help it navigate more effectively, avoiding things like wires as it goes to deliver your packages. But Chris, I know we were talking a little bit about this. The exciting aspect here is just the level of number of consumers they'll be able to serve with this technology.
Definitely. Interesting stat: about 80% of Amazon shipments currently could be delivered by this type of drone. So obviously, much heavier, larger objects will still need ground transport to the site of delivery. but about 80% would fit within, again, based on estimates, would fit within the weight and dimension requirements for this type of delivery. So the impact, obviously, to brands is this may be very quickly become a way a lot of your products are fulfilled at the speeds that obviously this arms race in delivery is pushing us towards. Whether this affects the kinds of packaging or dimensions even on a smaller level that are most optimal, kind of like when you think of like ships in own container or frustration-free packaging implications for the future of drone delivery, that's to be seen, but very interesting. This could have a lot of impact to us. And I think one kind of interesting point when we try to connect some of the dots here is, in recent months, Amazon's ambitious plan to launch, 3,200 satellites, which would give them 73% market share of all active satellites, kind of staggering, would not just offer low-cost internet to the world, but would also give them a greater sense of connectivity to drone delivery wherever they launch this, and provide potentially a much greater sense of access and accuracy to where they're delivering to the points of delivery. So I mean, I think this is very much in our real future, and I know Amazon is specifically following the government's requirements to ensure that they, even if they're not as progressive as they might like to push the boundaries, so that they can ultimately get approved and make these deliveries a real deal for the marketplace.
And I'd encourage anyone who hasn't seen it to go check out the YouTube that they put out of this thing. It's really kind of a beautiful production, and it's really interesting to see where this technology can go. And then also kind of in the realm of fulfillment, but also air-based fulfillment, it seems like the long brewing conflict and challenge between FedEx and Amazon, as Amazon invests further and further into its own logistics, has come to a head. FedEx has decided to cease serving Amazon with their FedEx Express air cargo service. This is not the entirety of their relationship. It's actually a very small portion of it. They will still serve Amazon with their ground regular deliveries. But in other news, Amazon continues to extend and look to fill these gaps themselves. Just shortly after that FedEx announcement, Amazon announced 15 additional new leased cargo jets to help them do this type of thing themselves. This has been a long time coming. I've got a headline down below from 2016 where Bloomberg was wondering if Amazon will kill FedEx. FedEx is not taking this line down. They specifically said in their announcement that FedEx Express counts, and Amazon's business through FedEx Express is less than 1.3% of their total revenue. And they recently announced in May that they plan to start doing e-commerce deliveries 7 days a week. And then finally, this past week, there was an interesting bit of news. FedEx moved to offer e-commerce fulfillment and returns through Dollar General stores. The access that store network could give them to U.S. consumers is pretty massive, and really makes Amazon's similar Kohl's partnership, where Amazon allows fulfillment and returns through Kohl's stores, seem rather small in comparison. So it's interesting to see these two kind of titans of very different industries, but increasingly the same industry kind of facing off in this space. Chris, your thoughts?
Again, being a nerd, I did some Google searching here just to see some additional stats. What was interesting is, so Amazon has about 42 planes. The estimates range based on the articles you read, with plans to be at about 70 by 2021. Who's to say that won't get up very, very quickly? But just to put that in perspective, FedEx across owned and chartered or contracted planes has about 670 to 690 planes. So that would make Amazon about 10% the size of FedEx on a global level. UPS, on the other hand, has about 251 planes right now, which would mean that Amazon would be about 30% the size. So again, size isn't everything, but just interesting to see the scale shifting here. And ultimately what's been interesting too is there have been a lot of discussions, again, speculations, but just how far is Amazon's foray into air / the influence on travel? Again, when you think of, this goes into different directions, but just interesting to think of how would Amazon expand to 3,000 stores by 2021? Is that through, airport locations? Does Prime Air become also an air passenger carrier at some point? There's a lot of different ways that this can go. Again, Amazon's been testing some integrations of travel marketplaces within websites globally. There's a number of potential capabilities here that would expand
Amazon into other industries, as we know they're very prone to do. So right now it's focused obviously on kind of the FedEx Amazon rivalry, but with an air cargo, but there's a lot of potential for leakage into other areas. So.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested, and this is a little bit kind of far out there, but as Amazon looks to perhaps monetize its logistics capabilities here and become more of a logistics provider across industries, is there a chance that suppliers that are currently, have ongoing negotiations with Amazon on, a retailer to supplier basis suddenly start to see logistics considerations, or Amazon at least trying to sell in logistics opportunities within those negotiations, much in the way they currently sell in advertising? I know it's fairly unrelated, but as Amazon moves into an industry, it seems to make sense that they might take advantage of their existing contacts to really drive revenues to a new division of the company as they go forward. But also looking at why they might be making these investments. It's been said ever since their last quarterly results, and due to some of the announcements from rival players ranging from Target to Walmart, Amazon is taking their free one-day shipping, and they've officially launched it nationwide. The assortment is vast. 10 million items are included in it. I know I, for one, as an Amazon shopper, can say that I've seen certain items getting to my house faster. We've got a map here on the screen that came from one of the investment banks, just to indicate that, one-day delivery was there for Amazon prior to this announcement, but they're really upping the ante and making it kind of more ubiquitous across the country. Chris, I know it's really interesting. It's almost an arms race we're looking at here between all the different retailers and e-commerce players in terms of delivery speeds.
Yeah, no, I mean, a lot of players have been testing, especially in urban, obviously key metro areas for several years. So one day, same day isn't totally new, but it's the scale and the coverage that's new, and the promise, obviously the guarantee that it will be delivered across so much of the country. Again, Amazon's been offering same day, one day in a lot of areas already. I've had products that would arrive, or even now I have a much greater assortment now available, and I did notice that from some of my most common purchases that I've been ordering on the app. But I think this, obviously their uppage here, they've upped the ante in response initially to Walmart's one-day promise on a large assortment. We've obviously had Target come in with its partnership with Shipt, integrating that purchase experience into their own website and upping it to same-day guarantee. Again, not all for free, but obviously, but very accessible. And now even Kroger just launched this week that they're testing their 30-minute delivery with the Kroger Rush program. So, I think the challenge here is obviously the speed, which is kind of one of Amazon's original value propositions that they consistently delivered on, and obviously helped earn them the most trusted brand in America status for several years. It's great that they're continuing to up this ante and over deliver on their original value proposition, but the key is, how sustainable is that? How necessary is that? There's also been that play of the Amazon day and setting a day of the weeks, because you don't need some of the stuff tomorrow or today. It's just nice that it could come, unless it's an impulse purchase. So I think that the challenge is trying to find that, as everyone's upping the ante, they're taking on the cost. Where does that cost go? A lot of them push it on the brands. But if it stays with the retailer or is shared, how do we mitigate that over time? And I think this is where we start seeing some of these other models, like the in-fridge delivery from Walmart, that's just starting to be tested. Well, that's really an interesting thing, but that's still last mile delivery, someone delivering it to your home. What if, again, not too futuristic here because it's already patented, Walmart patented an in-home consignment model. So your pantry would actually be a vending machine of sorts. Your fridge would be a vending machine. If we've already gotten someone who's going in to check your inventory for you and put it away, why couldn't they just assess what you need and replenish, right? And so that has a lot of implications on what products you carry and what's suggested for you, what's automated based on your past purchases. But that would solve a lot of last mile fulfillment issues, because your inventory wouldn't be owned until you consume it on site at your home. Again, drones, self-driving cars, the RoboMart in California, Neuro partnership with Kroger, all of these are starting to help scale and make more efficient this speed issue. But I do think it, and Jack, I don't know what your thoughts are, but I haven't seen Amazon really incentivizing that Amazon day model. I don't know if they're just bypassing that altogether because they will have the infrastructure to deliver
quickly through drones, etc. But I just think something has to give at some point, because not everyone can get it to you within 30 minutes.
Yeah,
and you don't need it.
It's interesting with Amazon Day, it's being presented to the consumer somewhat as a sustainability initiative. The idea that a lot of consumers don't like that all their items are arriving in different packages. So if they could assign a singular day, maybe Amazon could consolidate them in that way. And obviously it saves money for Amazon to kind of have that planned delivery day. But what we're hearing is the program, they're still working out the kinks in terms of actually getting things delivered in the same box. Many shoppers are getting all their items on the same day, but they're coming in separate packages, which is kind of not the consumer-facing message they want with the program. So we'll see if they can kind of figure out those issues in terms of the back end and actually making the program represent to the consumer what they say and support them in their kind of fulfillment cost structure by having kind of predictable delivery. It also is interesting to look at, the back end of how they fulfill these types of promises, one-day delivery, and news emerged from the 3P side of Amazon. And I'm sure this is reflective of some things we're hearing on the 1P side as well, that third-party sellers are being incentivized with up to 75% off storage fees for their best-selling items if they can send greater inventory into the Amazon FBA program. Amazon wants their fastest turning, most popular items in their warehouses because it enables them to fulfill at these new rapidly increasing rates. Amazon, first and foremost, wants to meet its promise, but also very much so wants to get its 3P sellers using as many aspects of its infrastructure as possible, as they get a great deal of revenue from them. The chart here on your screen is Amazon's net sales stack over the past few years. The black bar in the center there is third-party seller services revenue. And as you can see, that is becoming an increasing portion of Amazon's total net sales. It's very margin-supported net sales. Amazon is basically offering kind of as a service provider there to its sellers. It's interesting to see, Chris, how Amazon is looking to kind of optimize the types of inventory that's being sent into FBA and their fulfillment centers to really meet these promises.
Yeah, no, and I think this just goes, I think this reinforces the fact that, as exemplified in Jeff Bezos's recent 2018 shareholder letter, just the size, the importance of the marketplace and the third-party aspect of the marketplace. Not that has ever been questioned, but in the 1P vendor community, 3P is always a topic, but you don't think through that lens unless you sell that way. And what I don't think we always remember is just what share of business is going through 3P, even before some of the most recent I guess I would say challenges around the one vendor move and the shift of vendors and sellers to one third party or one party, first party, decision, and not having a hybrid model option. So I think this just keeps reinforcing the power the marketplace model has for them, and likely as they continue to push into a monetized platform across all industries they go into, that they might start with that vendor first model where they actually own part of the role, but eventually they become a platform that just enables others to work off of it. So I think the marketplace is their model. It's just sometimes they may have to start with more of an active role versus a manager role.
And while some 3P sellers are getting some great incentives because of these new initiatives, there's also continuing shifts in the restrictions placed on them. Chris, you sent through this story to me just yesterday that Amazon is going to crack down a bit on their title standards in terms of ASINs that are not up to what they want are going to get suppressed in search. Could you just elaborate a little bit more for me?
Yes, this was shared by someone in the network. I'll leave them nameless to protect the innocent, but this was published on the seller forums from Amazon, and isn't so surprising, but I think just might be worthy for 1P and 3Ps to be aware of. Ultimately, as Amazon's been trying to crack down on counterfeits and and obviously rogue 3Ps and fake reviews, again, why are they doing this? Ultimately, they're trying to protect the integrity and the credibility of a platform that has earned the #1 product search engine role and the #1 trusted brand in America role that they've earned to date. So this isn't so surprising that they would automate a process to start monitoring product titles specifically to ensure that they were actually, and they're starting obviously on the 3P side since that's where a lot more of the rogue behavior has originated, but more and more people are trying to pull the levers they have access to, which has been their digital shelf components, right? Titles, images, gallery images, A+ content, bullets, descriptions, etc. And obviously there are hacks, and I wouldn't say black hat tactics, but there are Gandalf, the white wizard tactics that do help you win in search. Some people have abused those and gone down the dark magic path, and so it's good to see Amazon cracking down, but that could have some implications if you aren't following some of the policies to the T. So it might be worthy for you to have your teams revisit that, just to ensure that your top seller isn't suppressed for something silly that you didn't realize was or seen silly, that you didn't realize was an issue. But again, I think they're taking a more active role, even if automated, AI driven, to crack down on some of this and preserve the authenticity of their search engine. So just having been a part of a lot of content sessions recently and brands trying to optimize their digital shelves, I thought this worthy to bring up, because this is, in true Amazon fashion, they set a date, so you might want to be thoughtful to the date. It's in the summer when most of us aren't paying attention to this. So
yeah, in true Amazon fashion, it seems like the restrictions and the guardrails are constantly shifting underfoot. So it's good to be kind of aware of these things as they come up rapidly. And what is kind of happening on the 3P side definitely probably reflects what's happening on the 1P as well. Our next two headlines, I'm actually going to roll through with just the descriptions fairly quickly, because I think they're kind of a part of the same theme in terms of, Amazon trying to evolve what the actual shopping experience is on the platform. So the first is an initiative Amazon's rolled into their mobile app called Style Snap. So you may be familiar with your Amazon app, the ability to use the camera to take a picture of the item. Amazon uses their artificial intelligence powered technology to identify that item or its closest match, so that you can just buy it on the platform. It's considered a little bit more intuitive and supposedly frictionless than text-based search. The idea of Style Snap is to take that artificial intelligence and that camera tool and bring it up another level, and also drive forward in a category that Amazon's really emphasizing these days in fashion, and actually provide recommendations of like items or items that go with. It's still early days, and the tool, as Amazon expresses it, will have to kind of train itself and get better. The idea is within the camera, you select Style Snap, you can take a picture, or you can upload a picture, say you screenshot from Instagram, as we've done here, and then load it in there. Amazon runs it through their algorithms and presents you with like items for you to purchase. So this is an example of shopping beyond going to Amazon with the actual intent to buy a specific item, and actually using a tool and Amazon helping you with discovery. And so Amazon hopes for this to perhaps be a success going forward in a category that they've traditionally had fits and starts in to some extent. An example of Amazon, again, also trying to help with that discovery and richness of experience versus spear phishing on the platform. Amazon had a program known as Spark, which was a social shopping feature. Basically, shoppers could get involved in sharing items they recently purchased on their feed. They could share their reviews. They meant for kind of a high level of shopper participation and seeing what your friends bought, much in the way that some of the Chinese marketplaces have integrated. The program was not a success. I imagine that many people maybe haven't even heard of it, and they even tried to launch it in India in December. This past month, they decided to shut it down. Simply put, Amazon couldn't drive the network effects that make an effective social network. For people looking for kind of curation, discovery, shopping, there's other options to them out there in Instagram and Pinterest. Amazon's making moves to integrate to those platforms as well with greater shoppability. So Spark was not a success. I think the high-level takeaway that I've kind of been hinting at here is that Amazon is a great platform for knowing what you want or knowing something you want to solve and going to it, reading the reviews, finding the items you need in their vast assortment, purchasing them, and having them delivered in a highly convenient, high-speed manner. What they're trying to get to is to be a more curated and browse-oriented platform to really try and drive some of that more kind of experiential online experience as much as possible, build bigger baskets, and help shoppers in categories that are a little bit less mission-driven, so to speak. So it's interesting to see kind of as they've evolved, some programs they hope to be successes and some programs that maybe have flopped.
And I think one question to always ask, because I think, to be honest, there's some people in the industry, and it's not wrong, but who almost look for the failure that Amazon hasn't been able to fail to date. So when there is a slight failure, there's almost an uproar of PR and articles all about how, see, it was never going to work. And I'm not saying specifically this, but just in general, the question I always want to know is what, okay, not why did they fail or why are they shutting it down? What did they learn that made this decision? Because they are unusually good at learning something from what they do. Now, we don't always know what that is because they don't share that publicly all the time, but ultimately pivoting to something else. And again, we don't know that there isn't some underpinning acquisition or partnership or reason that they might shut down their own, but they put it up to start to get some of that data. And so I think we should never underestimate, you know, again, I loved the way Jeff Bezos worded his, the Amazon strategy around wandering in the shareholder letter, because it does feel sometimes a little bit like they're wandering, but they're very successful because they find things along the way that ultimately become huge pillars of their business. And so they are just as prone to failure as anyone else, but I think they use failure and actually teach themselves something from it. And so it'd be really interesting. It'll be interesting to see what comes out of, especially within this fashion and discovery space that we may not be able to see today, that likely is the learning that came from a quote unquote failure here.
Yeah, and it is interesting, that kind of playbook of learning from failures. It leads well into our next topic in a completely different space, but nevertheless, what would be maybe in the headlines a failure? Last month, we talked about Amazon's major investment in Deliveroo, which is a really widespread, widely adopted restaurant delivery platform, most strongly based in Europe, but in other countries or in other areas as well. Amazon led the $575 million most recent round of funding there. Oftentimes where Amazon looks to lead with funding and venture, they may look to acquire later. The follow-up on that news is this month, Amazon has decided to, in a couple days actually, completely cease their Amazon restaurants restaurant delivery program. Amazon Restaurants was like an Uber Eats or Grubhub, and I think what happened here is Amazon found itself running up against an entrenched market where Uber Eats and Grubhub and some of the other platforms have already taken so much of the mind share of your restaurant delivery shopper or food aggregator shopper. Amazon maybe felt like they collected a fair amount of data on that type of shopper, but Amazon Restaurants nevertheless was not able to get off the ground. Amazon likely sees that their existing infrastructure helps with grocery delivery. They've got this wide distributed network of basically on-call, on-demand, urban-based delivery drivers fulfilling their Prime Now orders. Restaurants seems like it'd be a logical next step. I think the challenge they ran into was just not having that widespread consumer awareness. So, if I had to guess, I'd say Deliveroo perhaps is the step forward there. Deliveroo does have the market share, the mind share to perhaps do this. Restaurants is closed. It'll be interesting to see kind of, where they go with Deliveroo going forward.
And again, I think whether Amazon is focused on something with a lead horse or not in the moment, I think is not indicative of their ability to ramp up very quickly, acquire, partner again. I think there's also some just, and we'll talk to this a little bit, but there has been obviously some government raised eyebrows around the, not necessarily a monopoly, because they don't necessarily have a monopoly in any one area. It's not an antitrust issue at the moment from traditional definitions of antitrust, but it's the influence that their ecosystem has. And so there could be some strategic import to not doing it yourself, but investing in those who do it for you or can benefit in the short term while they figure out what that looks like. And we'll discuss that briefly in a minute. But I do think too, and I just bring this up, like, obviously Amazon has their eyes on lots of different things, and so they're able to innovate and continue to drive momentum in so many different businesses. But when Jeff Bezos at the Mars conference recently is talking publicly about moon colonization and moving industry to another planet, and again, ambitious plans for satellites and space travel, and again, obviously some of that could be obviously for some of the PR flair, as it's not all launched today, but like, if that's what he's talking about publicly, that's not what he's thinking privately. And I think that the reality is their eyes may be set on much bigger things over the years that they've realized is a much bigger opportunity that they've learned about through their test and learning than maybe the restaurant business is today. So I think again, it's interesting to see where their priorities shift, because they do close things down temporarily as they move their platform to other areas. But I mean, when I hear some of those, yes, fluffy, but yes, ambitious plans that actually sound rather reasonable, I could see that this might not be one of the areas they feel they have to own right now, because they're trying to worry about how they provide access to the world, to the internet, and then move industry and fulfillment to an orbiting planet, or a moon around our Earth. So I mean, I think I just, again, I know that sounds very futuristic. This stuff is like happening in front of us. So we're not talking. Yes, that may be decades away before space travel is, a real deal, an active deal for us. But I just think that's where the eyes are being set, much more ambitious than just who delivers my Taco Bell.
The vastness in terms of what they're looking at strategically, it comes up every month on this webcast. So it'll be interesting to see kind of as they move into these different spaces, and also kind of in the realm of delivery. I also think, and also looking to Europe, seeing the expansion of Morrison's at Amazon Prime Now, it's been interesting to watch as well. So Prime Now in the US is delivering out of a large share of the whole store network. It allows them to access perishable grocery. It actually seems like Prime Now has been more of their path forward in terms of home delivery of perishable groceries. And in the UK, it seems like Morrison's is their partner there. The interesting difference, obviously, is that Amazon owns Whole Foods. They do not own Morrison's. So Morrison's is evaluating, probably on an ongoing basis, their relationship with Amazon in terms of, what data is Amazon acquiring? What share of sales does Amazon take for Prime Now delivery? And weighing that against the opportunity of serving shoppers who want home delivery that they perhaps can't, but Amazon Prime Now can. So they're expanding from beyond their current kind of 4 metro areas to several more by end of 2019, with really more ambitious aspirations to come. So it'll be interesting, especially in Europe, how these kind of Amazon as a retailer competitor and Amazon as a partner relationships really work out.
And I think, honestly, having, when you look at the UK and European landscape, several players have been trying to lean in the same way that the Walmarts and Krogers and Targets of the world have doubled down in this space in the US in recent years. But Morrison's has been a little bit behind the early innovator path. So this partnership that they've had for a while is, I think, a good thing for them. My watch out to them, not that they aren't thinking about this, is what's your diversification strategy? What other baskets are you putting your eggs into? Because I think ultimately this is not just for them, but the brands that depend on them and their core business, and ultimately their growth potential. We know there are other stories of partners that have found mutual benefit with Amazon, but later didn't see the same benefit. And I think it's good to partner now, but what's the long-term partnership strategy and approach? And I'm assuming these are all very smart leaders, so I imagine there's thought to that. But again, you wouldn't want to put all of your eggs only in an Instacart basket in the U.S. Not because Instacart isn't a fabulous partner, but you want to make sure you're developing some capabilities in the case that someone acquires Instacart, or that they that allegiances change, right? And I think owning some of these is really important. So it's exciting to see the partnership grow. We've seen history play out, and it hasn't always been favorable to the partner that wasn't named Amazon. So just some thoughts for those who partner with Morrison's and Morrison's themselves.
And it's a great lead into kind of our next subject. One of the news headlines we've been seeing in terms of regulatory scrutiny has been out of Europe, and a lot of the anticipation of Amazon running up against regulatory authorities has been focused on Europe. And the idea there is that, is Amazon a retailer? Are they a service platform? If I'm delivering Prime Now, I own the data, I own the delivery method, I get a share of sales. We've seen some players actually pull back from Amazon in this respect. Amazon is constantly citing the fact that their share of retail sales doesn't really constitute anti-competitive or monopolization of the market. But one could argue that, in this modern economy, their share of data might be monopolistic to some extent. They understand at some point maybe what a shopper's restaurant delivery ordering history is, their Amazon Marketplace ordering history is, delivery from Morrison's, for example, being able to plot that against if they had Amazon Pay, their Amazon payments behavior. It is a vast network of data and understanding of the consumer that could be concerning to regulatory authorities. That being said, it's interesting to see that despite eyes looking to Europe for regulatory crackdown on Amazon, the FTC in the United States is open to probe into Amazon around a few different areas, mostly focused to competition. So the 3 points of emphasis are laid out here on the slide. First and foremost is FBA pricing. The FTC is interested in if Amazon is unfairly competing against their own 3P sellers, who are very much considered in the eyes of the government small businesses, very fragmented, good for competition, good for prices, good for consumer. Amazon, as we know, charges a higher rate for FBA costs, everything from storage to delivery of the items that 3P sellers send to their warehouses than they probably incur for their own inventory that they source on a 1P basis. And the government is trying to decide if that is anti-competitive, basically Amazon using their control of their 3P sellers to charge any rate they really want for FBA, and then competing against them on a 1P basis at lower costs using their own logistics network. The second area is own brand promotion, and we've had a lot of discussions about this in the webcast recently, the idea that Amazon is potentially positioning some of their own brands that they're increasingly rolling out in predatory ways, in promotional slots on product display pages, in search, that no one else has access to. And we actually did see a month or two ago, Amazon actually pared down some of these promotions to some extent. And then the final one is the Prime Service Bundle. The FTC is interested in Amazon looking more broadly outside the retail industry. The idea that Amazon's vast company is able to subsidize Prime at kind of almost negative margin to some extent, and some of the services, whether it be content streaming, whether it be data storage, photos, delivery, obviously the retail benefits. If other competitors in the market that offer just a singular of those services just simply can't compete because Amazon is unfairly subsidizing Prime. So it'll be interesting to see if the FTC makes any moves on this. There's been a lot of talks about how they'd actually enforce an action, if they force Amazon to do divestiture, but Chris, I know we were talking about, perhaps one of the only, major macro headwinds or concerns for Amazon is a regulatory one.
Yeah, I mean, I jokingly say Jeff Bezos's mortality is one challenge because he probably has figured out how to live forever. But I mean, his own mortality as the founder and the driver of this business is one challenge, just the finite life that we live. But then ultimately it's that regulatory restriction that, again, has been less strict, specifically in the United States to date, because the laws to date are generally, cover the areas around short-term cost price to the consumer and protecting the consumer. But whereas obviously influence is somewhat hard to capture and track. And so one thing that we kind of always say, this is just a good way to articulate it, when you think of that own brand promotion, a private label has been around forever. Or I say forever, forever in retail years, so to speak. It's not the issue of private label sitting next to a national global brand on the shelf at a brick and mortar retailer. It's that in digital shelf terms, a lot of times this is sitting in front, proverbially in front of the national brand. So it's not that we shouldn't have options and assortment choices and value choices. And it makes sense that retailers should have private label their own brands to some level. It's when your product essentially trumps any other product from showing up, and you have all the cards, and again, you have access to capabilities and placements, and again, especially when we think of like the digital shelf essentially lives above the fold on your phone or your laptop. So the challenge is if I don't see another product, it could technically not exist. We always say, you can hide a dead body on page 2 of Amazon because it doesn't exist to you. And so it's important that I fully support the strategy of developing that portfolio and driving exclusive brands, because again, Target's launching that with a lot of the D2C brands. I mean, it makes sense, differentiate your portfolio to create and maintain demand, but don't do it in a way that ultimately keeps others from being able to do the same. At least monetize it so everyone has equal or fair, quote unquote, opportunity to compete. And so it'll be interesting to see how this plays out, because again, a lot of other markets are a lot stricter, especially in Europe around this. And so I think I can't imagine other governments, including the US, taking pages from some of the governments worldwide that have already got slightly stricter and maybe already established rules for how to treat this. But again, this is a new age of tech magnate companies that didn't exist before and didn't have this like tentacle influence around so much of our lives. I mean, arguably you need an antitrust law for one's life, not one aspect of someone's life, one industry.
Absolutely. And just wanted to remind all of the subscribers to Edge Retail Insight on the line, there's other ways that you can kind of access our Amazon expertise and data, either through our Retail Market Monitor, deep data insights, get projections out to 2023 of Amazon sales, for example, in every single market they operate in, look at channel sales, look at where sales shifts are coming. And then also we recently published earlier this year our Amazon Pure Play Retail Report, where we go across a lot of the key Amazon initiatives with really tailored recommendations for suppliers playing in the space. But with that, I wanted to ask again that once I close out GoToWebinar, if you could fill out the survey, we'd really much appreciate it. But turn it over to, I believe we have time for 2 or 3 questions here. So the first of which is, I'll just take really quickly. Someone asked what comprises the 3P seller services number at Amazon's net sales. Is it just commission? It's more than just commission. It's their take rate on sales. It also includes all services they offer. So fulfillment by Amazon, any sort of advertising spend, things of that sort. A broader question that came up, Chris, that I know we were discussing earlier is this arms race around delivery speeds. We touched on it a little bit earlier, but what is the end state? What does the shopper truly need and desire? Yes, there's some things I need very rapidly and conveniently, but do I need 10 million items in under one day?
I think right now that's kind of the, when everyone's tried to move towards the virtual endless aisle where they can offer everything. And again, a lot of these are more mass retail players, obviously Amazon being the everything store and the Walmarts, Targets, and even Kroger's, who might have been playing more in like the grocery side, but really having that expansive, share of your potential wallet because it carries so much. I think the end state, obviously, as we kind of talked on, is finding an infrastructure and a model, and models is probably the better word, that ultimately enable that efficiency long term. Because again, unless you own all the scale or a significant scale of that true human-driven last mile fulfillment, it isn't going to be sustainable without changing your financial profile. And so, both as a retailer and as the brands that support them, and that may not work out for all those players. So again, is it moving products closer to I think we're going to see a lot of this already happening, but moving fulfillment centers closer to the center of the consumer, right? That could end up being in their home. Is it automated delivery through ground transport like the cars, or is it drone deliveries? Obviously, are another option. I mean, I think the end state right now it's kind of the PR buzzworthy claim that you can make, that we can get you everything that you ever possibly want, really, within this very short window of time. Do I really need my toilet paper that fast? If you do, that's a different issue altogether. But I think we are going to have there's going to pendulum will swing, and there'll be more of a focus on sustainability, and again, it'll go back to like the efficiency would really be, these items are AI driven and automated for me to get on my Amazon day or my Kroger day or my Walmart day. And then the things that I really need right now, I can choose to get right now as part of my membership or as for an extra fee. And so we're already seeing that kind of play in the sense that, like, right now you could get something same day from Target for a fee, or you can join the membership so you can get all of those same day or next day whenever you choose, at your discretion. But I think it's about giving people choices, because at the end of the day, there are going to be people who will say, I don't really need that all right now. But right now, my expectation has been built so high that I can get everything right now, that when I'm given the choice, do I want to wait an extra day to get my item? I don't choose yes, because I can get everything tomorrow. I might as well. There needs to be we almost have to untier people back towards like, incent me with more than just $1 in digital video credit on Amazon to move back to like standard shipping on stuff I don't really need right now. And unfortunately, we've over elevated the expectation, and now you have to kind of like incent me to move backwards, or really compel me with the message, and no one's doing that right now. So right now it's just who can, anything you can do, I can do better. Anything you can do, I can up my speed too. And that's going to hit a ceiling. So they'll have to come up with new models, and then they'll have to also re-incent people to think differently about what they need now and what they need later.
Shopper expectations continue to escalate. Well, with that, we're at time. Chris, I wanted to thank you for joining us for our special edition Amazon Monthly Briefing. It's been great.
Thank you so much.
To everyone on the line, thanks for joining. Feel free to reach out to either of us here, and look forward to seeing you at our next Amazon Monthly Briefing in July. Thank you.
Thank you.